if the tone of the legs is increased, toe walking. And if the child is toe walking, it possibly means that the child may have a spastic diplegia. Ask the mother, was the child born term or a preterm? Was he born earlier than 37 weeks? And if the mother says yes, then this obviously proves that this child has a spastic diplegia, because spastic diplegia is commonly a consequence of a periventricular leukomalacia, which is very common in preterm infants. Most common ischemic brain injury in preterm infants is a periventricular leukomalacia. And how does periventricular leukomalacia present? It presents as a spastic diplegia. The third type of cerebral palsy is spastic quadriplegia. This is the type of cerebral palsy which is commonly seen in Indian children and is usually known to result in arms and the legs both getting affected. It's a very, very dangerous type of cerebral palsy. Obviously, because all the arms and the legs are equally affected. So the tone, so child will obviously not be able to do anything because the tone of the arms is also increased, tone of the legs is also increased. This is the type of cerebral palsy which is very frequently associated with seizures. This is the type of cerebral palsy which is very frequently associated with even spinal defects such as scoliosis. This was a PG entrance question. Which type of cerebral palsy is commonly associated with scoliosis? It is a spastic quadriplegia. Which type of cerebral palsy is commonly associated with fits, seizures? It is a spastic quadriplegia. So while diplegia occurs very commonly in preterm infants, hemiplegia and quadriplegia are more commonly seen in term infants. And all these three, spastic hemiplegia, spastic diplegia, and a spastic quadriplegia, all the three are types of which type of cerebral palsy? A spastic cerebral palsy, which is when the cerebral cortex gets damaged. So I think now you must have written, I can now rub this. So I hope you are all enjoying the class and you have liked the class, because my main aim is to make the concepts very clear to you so that when you go for your FMG exams, which are much easier in comparison to the PG entrance exam, but at the same time the concepts remain the same. So once the concepts are there in your head, you will be able to answer any question in the exams. So this is what my main aim is. Okay. So when the cerebral cortex gets damaged, we have a type of cerebral palsy which is known as spastic cerebral palsy. The second type of cerebral palsy, I'm talking about classification cerebral palsy. The second type of cerebral palsy in when the basal ganglia gets damaged. Which is this type of cerebral palsy? When the basal ganglia gets damaged, this type of cerebral palsy is known as dyskinetic cerebral palsy or extrapyramidal cerebral palsy. Now the tone is not increased, but the child will be having these type of abnormal chorioethetoid movements, which is often known to result because of damage to the basal ganglia. So which type of cerebral palsy occurs when there is damage to the cerebral cortex? It is spastic cerebral palsy. Which type of cerebral palsy occurs when there is damage to the basal ganglia? It is dyskinetic cerebral palsy. And if you remember in my class yesterday, I was telling you one problem or one disorder of a newborn which very commonly affects the basal ganglia, very commonly causes damage to the basal ganglia. And when basal ganglia gets damaged, remember I told you in HI, when basal ganglia gets damaged, you have bilateral mottling of the basal ganglia, which is known as status marmoratus. Remember? So at that time I told you which is the disorder which frequently causes damage to the basal ganglia. Answer is kernicterus. So when kernicterus leads to cerebral palsy, it will lead to which type of cerebral palsy? It will lead to a dyskinetic cerebral palsy. This is again an FMGE question. Kernicterus leads to which type of cerebral palsy? If you remember, among the causes of cerebral palsy, I told you prematurity, low birth weight, kernicterus, torch infections, meningitis. Kernicterus leads to which type of cerebral palsy? Kernicterus leads to a dyskinetic cerebral palsy. It usually does not lead to a spastic cerebral palsy. There is no increased tone, but there are chorioethetoid movements like this. So it will be which type of cerebral palsy? It will be dyskinetic cerebral palsy. The third type of cerebral palsy, which often occurs because of damage to the basal ganglia, is cerebellar damage. Sorry, damage to the cerebellum is a ataxic cerebral palsy. So which is the third type of cerebral palsy? It is ataxic cerebral palsy. It is primarily because of damage to the cerebellum. So here the child neither has an increased tone nor the child has abnormal movements, but this time the child is ataxic because cerebellum is responsible for coordination. So the child is not moving in one straight direction. The child often is ataxic while walking. So this type of cerebral palsy is known as ataxic cerebral palsy. Then the fourth type of cerebral palsy, and the fifth type of cerebral palsy can occur because of damage to the any part of the brain. One is known as hypotonic cerebral palsy. It can be any part of the brain which is damaged, and the other is mixed type of cerebral palsy, which has mixed features of these. So again, any part of the brain can be damaged. So this classification of cerebral palsy, which is the most accepted classification, divides cerebral palsy according to which part of the brain is damaged. So I'll repeat. First, spastic cerebral palsy when the cerebral cortex is damaged. Second, dyskinetic cerebral palsy when the basal ganglia is damaged. Dyskinetic cerebral palsy is also known as extrapyramidal cerebral palsy. Third is ataxic cerebral palsy when the cerebellum is primarily damaged. Fourth is a hypotonic cerebral palsy. Here, any part of the brain is damaged, including the cerebellum, which can be damaged. And the fifth is mixed cerebral palsy, where you have mixed features of all the above type of cerebral palsy. So which are the 5 types of cerebral palsy that you should know of? Spastic, extrapyramidal or dyskinetic, then ataxic, then hypotonic, and mixed. I'll again repeat. Which are the 5 types of cerebral palsies? First is spastic. Second is dyskinetic or extrapyramidal. Third is ataxic. Fourth is hypotonic, and fifth is mixed. Spastic cerebral palsy due to damage to the cerebral cortex. Dyskinetic cerebral palsy, damage to the basal ganglia. Ataxic cerebral palsy, damage to the cerebellum. And hypotonic and mixed can be because of damage to any part of the brain. Spastic cerebral palsy, again divided up into 3 categories. Spastic hemiplegia, one half of the body has increased tone. Spastic diplegia, the legs have more tone in comparison to the arms. Legs are having more tone, but the arms are not normal. Arms are also affected, but to a lesser extent than the legs. And third is spastic quadriplegia, both the arms and both the legs have increased tone. Which is the type of cerebral palsy most commonly known to be seen in preterms who have periventricular leukomalacia? It is spastic diplegia. This is a very, very important question. That is why I'm again and again stressing on it. Which is the type of cerebral palsy which is the most serious? It is obviously quadriplegia, when both the arms and both the legs, the tone is increased. Which is the type of cerebral palsy most commonly seen in India? Probably it is spastic quadriplegia. And which is the type of cerebral palsy most commonly associated with seizures and scoliosis? It is spastic quadriplegia. I hope cerebral palsy now is thoroughly done and you do not have any problem in remembering. So these are the pictures that can be given to you, and they can ask you like this. So when the cerebral cortex is damaged, it is which type of cerebral palsy? It is spastic cerebral palsy. Green colored is the basal ganglia. When the basal ganglia is damaged, which type of cerebral palsy? It is dyskinetic cerebral palsy. So they can give you a picture like the green colored picture. The basal ganglia is damaged. They can write green colored portion of a child has been damaged from birth. Which type of cerebral palsy will the child have? The child will have a dyskinetic cerebral palsy. Then the orange colored portion, so the cerebellum is damaged. So this will be an ataxic cerebral palsy. Mixed and hypotonic. can be because of damage to any part of the brain. So spastic, dyskinetic, ataxic, hypotonic, and mixed cerebral palsies, which is overall the most common. Overall, the most common type of cerebral palsy is spastic cerebral palsy, and which is the type of cerebral palsy most commonly seen in premature infants. It is a spastic diplegia. Right? So hope you enjoyed cerebral palsy. It's a very, very difficult topic, but I hope you understood it and you have enjoyed the topic as well, because I've just tried to simplify it as much as possible so that this can become very simple to you. And this is, I told you, which part of the brain is getting affected. Spastic में it is cerebral cortex, dyskinetic में it is basal ganglia, ataxic में it is cerebellum, hypotonic and mixed. Now the last thing, with this we finish up neurology, but there is just last a few things that I would like to mention about brain tumors. And with this we'll end. Brain tumors. The first thing that you need to remember is which is the most common malignancy seen in children. Most common malignancy seen in children. So the most common malignancy which is seen in children is leukemia. Which is the most common malignancy that is seen in children? It is leukemia. Learn it by heart. Second, which is the most common solid malignancy seen in children? Solid malignancy seen in children. The most common solid malignancy. Now it's not malignancy, it is solid malignancy which is seen in children. The answer is brain tumors. So brain tumors are quite common in children and are believed to be the most common solid malignancy seen in children. And the third is, which is the most common extracranial solid malignancy in children. Extracranial solid malignancy in children. Now because it is extracranial, now brain tumors cannot come here. In children, it is a tumor which arises from the adrenal medulla or the sympathetic chain, which is known as a neuroblastoma. So please remember, which is the most common malignancy overall in children? Leukemia. Which is the most common solid malignancy in children? Brain tumors. But which is the most common extracranial solid malignancy in children? It is a neuroblastoma. This is a tumor which most commonly arises from the adrenal cortex. So it's again a tumor, but most commonly arises from the adrenal cortex. So it is not a cranial, but a extracranial brain tumor. Sorry, extracranial tumor. So I'll just repeat once again. Which is the most common malignancy in children? Leukemias. Which is the most common solid malignancy in children? Brain tumors. And which is the most common extracranial solid malignancy in children? It is neuroblastoma. It can arise from any part of the body outside the brain, but most commonly arises from the adrenal medulla. And what is secreted by the adrenal medulla? If you remember, it is epinephrine, norepinephrine. So epinephrine, norepinephrine levels in these children are very high. So these children at a very early age can have flushing of the face, can have hypertension. So hypertension in a young child can be a presenting feature of this. In fact, bone pains, because these tumors frequently go to the bone. Frequently they metastasize to the bone. So bone pain is a very important presentation of a neuroblastoma. Bone pain or flushing of the face because of high epinephrine levels, or even these children can have hypertension. So most common malignancy, leukemia. Most common solid malignancy, brain tumors. And most common extracranial solid malignancy, neuroblastoma. I hope you have all written this. Now, recently, there has been a classification of brain tumors. The old classification of brain tumors has been revised. I've just tried to filter this for the pediatric practice and tell you what are the type of brain tumors that we normally have in children. The most common type of brain tumors that we see in children are low-grade gliomas. Which are the most common type of brain tumors which are seen in children? Low-grade gliomas. And these low-grade gliomas include which type of brain tumors? So first it includes a tumor which is known as pilocytic astrocytoma. Then it also includes a pylomyxoid astrocytoma. And then it includes another tumor which is known as subependymal giant cell astrocytoma. So all of them are astrocytomas. Astrocytomas are very, very frequent tumors seen in children. And why is the name astrocytomas? Because they appear like astrocytes. You know, astrocytes are cells of the brain and they appear like astrocytes, hence the name astrocytomas. All of these astrocytomas come under which group of tumors? Low-grade gliomas. Pilocytic astrocytoma, why is it called pilocytic? Because when you see under the microscope, histopathology, they have hair-like projections can be seen. So pylo is hair, pylos is hair, so hair-like projections can be seen. Pilocytic astrocytoma, extremely low-grade tumor. Pylomyxoid astrocytoma, slightly more invasive, but again it is very, very lowly invasive. Out of pilocytic and pylomyxoid, probably pylomyxoid slightly more invasive than pilocytic. But pilocytic are the least invasive. WHO grading, they are grade 1 invasive astrocytomas. They hardly go anywhere. 7 months, 8 months, 1 year, they keep on lying at the same place. They will never spread in the brain. So they have excellent prognosis. Which type of brain tumor has excellent prognosis? Pilocytic astrocytomas. Excellent prognosis. Normally they are known to lie in the peripheries of the cerebellum. So they can also be called as cerebellar astrocytomas. Why are they called cerebellar astrocytomas? Because they are arising from the peripheries of the cerebellum. You know, cerebellum has in the center, it has a vermis, and on the peripheries you have the lobe. So if a brain tumor is arising from the periphery of the cerebellum, it is likely to be a very low-grade tumor which is known as pilocytic astrocytoma. Pylomyxoid astrocytoma can also occur from the cerebellum, slightly more invasive in comparison to pilocytic, but still it is very, very little invasive. That is why they all come under low-grade gliomas. And then there is a tumor which I don't think you need to go into the detail. It is called as a subependymal giant cell astrocytoma. Now this is a brain tumor which is present, as the name suggests, subependymal, just below the ependymal lining. Ependymal lining is the ventricle cavity lining. It is the most common brain tumor seen in tuberous sclerosis. Tuberous sclerosis, I have not told you about tuberous sclerosis because till now there has been no question asked in FMG. Plus these are slightly more complicated neurological disorders. Tuberous sclerosis, just remember, a type of neurocutaneous disorders. Neurocutaneous means these are type of disorders in which there are different types of abnormalities on the skin plus abnormalities of the brain. Neurocutaneous. You must have heard of neurofibromatosis. It's a type of a neurocutaneous disorder. In the same group, you have a disorder which is known as tuberous sclerosis. The only thing that you need to know is tuberous sclerosis can be associated with tumors of the brain. Which is the type of tumor of the brain which is frequently seen in tuberous sclerosis? Answer: subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. So three types of low-grade gliomas: pilocytic astrocytomas, pilomyxoid astrocytomas, and subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. Pilocytic and pilomyxoid. Pylos means hair. So microscopically, hair-like projections can be seen. They commonly arise from the cerebellum, are very low grade, excellent prognosis. And mostly when these astrocytomas arise from the cerebellum, they will be called as cerebellar astrocytomas. Which part of the cerebellum they arise? They normally arise from the peripheries of the cerebellum. I am repeating this again and again because the next tumor that I will be telling you is very relevant here. The next tumor that I will be telling you is a medulloblastoma. So this is the next group of tumor, medulloblastoma. Unlike an astrocytoma, which arises from the cerebellum and is very low grade, medulloblastomas are embryonic tumors also called as embryonal tumors and are known to arise from the cerebellum. But unlike astrocytomas, which are low grade, they are very invasive tumors and normally arise from the center of the cerebellum. Please don't get confused. Both astrocytomas can arise from the cerebellum and medulloblastomas can arise from the cerebellum. But astrocytomas have excellent prognosis and always arise from the peripheries of the cerebellum. On the other hand, medulloblastomas usually are highly invasive and arise from the center of the cerebellum. These are group of embryonal tumors. I think in FMG last exam this question was asked. It is which type of tumor? Medulloblastoma. It's an embryonal tumor. Embryonic cells. It is made up of embryonal cells. Usually arises from the center of the cerebellum and very poor prognosis. So let me see if you have understood or not. Let me ask you a question. If there is a tumor which is known to arise from the peripheries of the cerebellum, I do an MRI scan, I see a tumor which is arising from the periphery of the cerebellum. That means the lobes of the cerebellum. Is it likely to have a good prognosis or poor prognosis? It is arising from the peripheries. What is your answer? Answer it. It is likely to have a good prognosis. Because if it is arising from the peripheries of the cerebellum, it is likely to be a astrocytoma. It is not likely to be a medulloblastoma. Medulloblastomas usually arise from the center of the cerebellum and are known to have very poor prognosis. So if there is a brain tumor which appears to be arising from the vermis, from the center of the cerebellum, it will have very poor prognosis because it is likely to be a medulloblastoma. There is another brain tumor which is called as craniopharyngioma. Where does craniopharyngioma arise from? Craniopharyngioma usually arises from the pituitary area. It usually arises from near the pituitary stalk. It is a tumor which is frequently known to be associated with calcifications. So if you do an MRI or if you do a CT scan and just around the pituitary area you can see areas of calcifications, it is likely to be a craniopharyngioma. You know, you must have heard of sella turcica. Sella turcica, which is where the place where the pituitary lies. So this is a brain tumor which is lying just above the sella turcica and causes calcification. So it is a very important cause. Of suprasellar calcification. In the suprasellar area, sella turcica area, if calcifications can be seen on an MRI or a CT scan, which brain tumor will you suspect? You will suspect a craniopharyngioma. It's a very slow growing tumor. Again, it's not as invasive as medulloblastoma. Medulloblastoma is deadly. And one brain tumor which arises from the lining of the ventricle cavity is ependymoma. So this arises from the ventricle lining. Especially which ventricle lining? Fourth ventricle lining. So I'll repeat again. Classification of brain tumors. So they can be low-grade gliomas, which include pilocytic astrocytomas, pylomyxoid astrocytomas, and subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. Pilocytic and pylomyxoid astrocytomas usually arise from the peripheries of the cerebellum. They are astrocytomas or cerebellar astrocytomas, have excellent prognosis and usually arise from the peripheries of the cerebellum. So any brain tumor which is arising from the peripheries of the cerebellum is likely to have an excellent prognosis. The second type of brain tumor which is very dangerous, medulloblastoma. This is an embryonal tumor which is known to arise from the center of the cerebellum. So any brain tumor which is arising from the center of the cerebellum is likely to be highly dangerous and is likely to be a medulloblastoma. Peripheries, if it is arising, it is likely to be an astrocytoma, very good prognosis. But if it is arising from the center of the cerebellum, it is a medulloblastoma, it is likely to be associated with a very poor prognosis. The third type of brain tumor is a craniopharyngioma. This is a brain tumor which is known to arise from near the pituitary area, sella turcica. So it's above the sella turcica and is frequently known to be associated with calcification. So which brain tumor is known to be associated with suprasellar calcification? It is a craniopharyngioma. It's a very slow growing tumor, so not as dangerous as medulloblastoma. But yes, one thing that you need to remember, it can frequently recur. So even if you remove it, it can frequently recur. So this is one thing which is bad about this tumor, but still it is not as dangerous as a medulloblastoma. And finally, the tumor which arises from the ependymal lining. Ependymal lining is the lining of the ventricle cavity. This type of brain tumor is known as an ependymoma. Usually it can arise from the lining of any ventricle, lateral ventricles, third ventricle or a fourth ventricle, but which ventricle lining it frequently arises from? Most frequently it arises from the lining of the fourth ventricle. So which are the brain tumors you should think of? You should think of low-grade gliomas, which are astrocytomas and subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. Then you should know about medulloblastomas. Then you should know about craniopharyngioma, which arises from the pituitary area. And then you should know about ependymoma. There are many other type of brain tumors. I would not go into the details of that. One last thing that I would like to tell you is this. In a brain, there is a lining of dura mater which runs across the brain, which is known as tentorium cerebelli. What is it called? It is called as tentorium cerebelli. So all those tumors of the brain which arise from above the tentorium will be called as supratentorial brain tumors. Supratentorial brain tumors. So basically, most of the tumors which are arising from the cerebral cortex, the shaded area. The shaded area is the cerebral cortex. So most of the tumors which are arising from the cerebral cortex will be known as supratentorial brain tumors. While most of the tumors which arise from the cerebellar area, this area is the cerebellum, below the tentorium line, these will be known as infratentorial brain tumors. This will be known as infratentorial brain tumors. So basically most of the tumors of the cerebellum, this is the cerebellar area, the shaded portion is the cerebellar area. So most of the brain tumors which arise from the cerebellum, they are called as infratentorial brain tumors because they lie below the tentorium cerebelli line. Those brain tumors which lie above the tentorium cerebelli line, that means they are mainly arising from the cerebral cortex, they will be called as supratentorial brain tumors. Those which arise from below the line, they are known as infratentorial brain tumors. So I'll just give you an example. Ependyoma, I told you, arises from the fourth ventricle lining, but usually arises from which lining? It usually arises from the lining of the fourth ventricle. So will it be supratentorial, infratentorial? It will be infratentorial. IT, infratentorial, because it is mainly lying from the, it is mainly arising from the fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle is below the tentorium lining. Craniopharyngioma, it is rising from the pituitary area. Pituitary area is actually the cerebral cortex area. So therefore, craniopharyngioma is likely to be a supratentorial tumor. Again, medulloblastoma, from where is it arising? It is arising from the cerebral cortex. It is arising, from the cerebellum, from the center of the cerebrum. So because it is arising from the cerebellum, it is likely to be infratentorial. Similarly, most of the cerebellar astrocytomas, because they are again arising from the cerebellum, they will be infratentorial. So you are seeing majority of brain tumors are infratentorial. One example that I've told you supratentorial is craniopharyngioma. So which type of brain tumors are more common? Is it supra or infratentorial brain tumors? It is infratentorial brain tumors which are more common in children compared to supratentorial. So with this, we finish up brain tumors. I'll just revise brain tumors once again because it's a complicated topic. So I'll just revise it once again. See, brain tumors based upon whether they are lying above the tentorium cerebelli or below the tentorium cerebelli, they are divided up into supratentorial brain tumors, infratentorial brain tumors. Supratentorial arise from the cerebral cortex. Infratentorial normally arises from the cerebellum area, below the tentorium cerebelli. So most of the brain tumors which arise from the cerebellum will be called as infratentorial brain tumors. Infra below, tentorial below the tentorium cerebelli. Which type of brain tumors are more common in children? Is it supra or infratentorial? Answer, infratentorial brain tumors are more commonly seen in children. Among the brain tumors that are seen in children, we have low-grade gliomas, which can be pilocytic astrocytomas, pylomyxoid astrocytomas, and subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. Because majority of these astrocytomas are known to arise from the cerebellar area, they are also called as cerebellar astrocytomas. They are all infratentorial. Cerebellar astrocytomas, infratentorial. Any brain tumor from a cerebellum, infratentorial tumor. Medulloblastoma normally is a brain tumor which is highly invasive. It is an embryonal brain tumor and is known to rise from the center of the cerebellum. So because again it is rising from the cerebellum, it becomes a infratentorial brain tumor. Craniopharyngioma. Craniopharyngioma is a tumor which arises from the pituitary stalk area. So above the sella turcica. So because this is the area of the cerebral cortex, so it is above the tentorium cerebelli, this will become a supratentorial brain tumor. Very, very notorious for causing calcifications in the suprasellar area. So which is the most common brain tumor which is associated with suprasellar calcification? It is a craniopharyngioma. But if you resect it, it is likely to recur. So which type of brain tumor has a very high recurrence rate? It is craniopharyngioma. But still not as invasive as a medulloblastoma. Not as invasive as a medulloblastoma. And the last type of brain tumor which can arise from the ependymal lining is an ependyoma. It can arise from the lining of the lateral ventricles, the third ventricle or the fourth ventricle, but normally arises from the lining of the fourth ventricle, so it becomes an ependyoma. So it is infratentorial because fourth ventricle is the infratentorial area, so this is the infratentorial brain tumor. Which is the most common malignancy in children? It is leukemias. Most common solid malignancy in children? It is brain tumors. And which is the most common extracranial solid malignancy in children? It is neuroblastoma. With this, we finish up neurology. But before I finish up neurology completely, I have a one question to ask you. These are 4 tumors that you can see, rather 3 tumors that you can see. A picture like this will be given, and I would like to ask you, please name the brain tumor. So the first picture that you can see is a brain tumor. You can see the arrow white color tumor. It is arising from the pituitary area. See this picture? This is the pituitary area, circle. So if it is arising from the pituitary area, it is likely to be which type of a brain tumor? It is likely to be a craniopharyngioma. So picture number 1 is a craniopharyngioma. See picture number 2. Picture number 2, they have said there is a large solid mass which is present in the, this is the brain tumor. There is a large solid mass which is arising from the periphery of the cerebellum. It is written in the question, a large solid mass which is arising from the left cerebellar periphery. What is the most common brain tumor? So because it is arising from the cerebral periphery, it is not arising from the center, it is likely to be a cerebellar astrocytoma. So picture number 2 is an astrocytoma. Had it been arising from the middle of the cerebellum, it would have become a medulloblastoma. And see picture number 3, the big arrow, where is it arising? You are seeing the 4th ventricle. This is the 4th ventricle. This is the 4th ventricle. So it is arising from the lining of the 4th ventricle. You can see the tumor, white colored tumor. The arrow is showing a white colored tumor. This is arising from the lining of the 4th ventricle. Therefore, this becomes an ependymoma. So low-grade gliomas, medulloblastomas, ependyomas, craniopharyngiomas. Low-grade gliomas, pilocytic astrocytomas, pilomyxoid astrocytomas, and subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. Periphery from the cerebellum, astrocytoma. Middle of the cerebellum, medulloblastoma. Cerebellar astrocytoma, excellent prognosis. Medulloblastoma, very poor prognosis. So with this, we finish up chapter number 4, neurology. Again, I hope you have understood the topic thoroughly. I'll just repeat once again some important points. I started neurology by telling you first about the fontanelles of the brain. So there are 6 fontanelles of the brain, 1 posterior, 1 anterior, 2 sphenoid, 2 mastoid fontanelles. The sequence of closure, 0 to 3 months posterior, 3 to 6 months sphenoid, 6 to 18 months mastoid, 18 to 24 months is anterior. So the first fontanelle to close is posterior and the last fontanelle to close is anterior. Then we talked about neural tube defects. I told you the classification of neural tube defects. Craniospinal, cranial, spinal. Craniospinal, always open, craniorachis. Cranial can be open, can be closed. Open cranial, anencephaly, closed cranial, encephalocele. Spinal again can be closed and open. Closed spinal is spina bifida occulta. Open spinal, when meninges herniating out, meningocele. When spinal cord also herniating out, myelomeningocele. Most common neural tube defect, spina bifida occulta, but most common, which is most serious, is myelomeningocele. Dose of folic acid for primary prevention, 0.4 milligrams per day. For secondary prevention, 4 milligrams per day. Then I also talked about abnormalities in head size, microcephaly, head circumference less than 3 standard deviation, macrocephaly, head circumference more than 2 standard deviation. Microcephaly causes torch infections, then HI, then syndromes such as Down syndrome, Edwards syndrome, Cry-Duchat syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal hydantoin syndrome. Macrocephaly, most common cause in children is hydrocephalus, but other causes which are important are Alexander's disease, Canavan's disease, and Tay-Sachs disease. Then which is the types of hydrocephalus classifications? One is obstructive hydrocephalus, obstruction inside the ventricles. Non-obstructive hydrocephalus, obstruction outside the ventricles. Obstructive hydrocephalus, further, the most common type of obstructive hydrocephalus is when there is aqueductal stenosis, congenital aqueductal stenosis. Then I told you infections that can cause acquired aqueductal stenosis or acquired hydrocephalus are, one is mumps and one is toxoplasmosis. Then most common cause of a non-obstructive hydrocephalus is a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Which torch infection most commonly linked with microcephaly? It is CMV. Which torch infection most commonly linked with macrocephaly? Toxoplasmosis. Then I told you Arnold-Chiari malformation, Dandy-Walker syndrome. Arnold-Chiari malformation, small posterior fossa, and for a Dandy-Walker syndrome, a large cyst in the posterior fossa. Dandy-Walker syndrome, cyst in the posterior fossa, cyst arising from the fourth ventricle, and cyst should be compressing the cerebellum. Then I also told you about Arnold-Chiari malformation, where there is a small posterior fossa, herniation of the cerebellum, and it is the cerebellum which is compressing the fourth ventricle. Arnold-Chiari malformations can be of many types. Type 2 is the one which is associated with hydrocephalus and a myelomeningocele. Then most common seizures of childhood, febrile seizures. Simple febrile, complex febrile. Simple febrile, what are the criteria? Any seizure which lasts for less than 15 minutes, any seizure which is generalized, any seizure where there is only one seizure in the febrile episode, and in the past one more criteria used, any seizure associated with no neurological defect will be simple febrile seizure. Simple febrile seizures usually between 6 months to 5 years of age. A complex febrile seizure can progress to epilepsies. Then routinely no investigation required except for the first episode of a febrile seizure. When you suspect meningitis, lumbar puncture may be required. For prophylaxis against a febrile seizure, you may have to give oral clobazam or oral diazepam, but only given when febrile seizures are very, very frequent. Say, for example, more than equal to 3 episodes in last 6 months or more than equal to 4 episodes in 1 year. Meningitis, most common cause of neonatal meningitis worldwide, group B streptococcus. In India, it is E. coli. Other causes of meningitis less than 2 months are Staphylococcus, Klebsiella, and Listeria. Between 2 months to 3 years, most common cause of meningitis, Haemophilus influenza. Others are Streptococcus pneumoniae and meningococcal. After 2 to 3 years, Streptococcus pneumoniae and meningococcus is the most common. Complications of meningitis, overall most common is seizures. Deafness, very commonly seen after pneumococcal meningitis, sometimes with Haemophilus influenza. And subdural effusion, very commonly seen with Haemophilus influenza. Antibiotics usually given for around 7 to 10 days, except when there is a gram-negative meningitis, when it should be given for 3 weeks. Cerebral palsy, how do you classify? Spastic, then dyskinetic, then hypotonic, then ataxic, then mixed. Spastic further classified into spastic hemiplegia, spastic diplegia, and spastic quadriplegia. Overall, most common type of cerebral palsy is spastic, the one which is seen in preterms as a result of periventricular leukomalacia, spastic diplegia. The one which is more commonly seen in India, quadriplegia, one which is more commonly associated with seizures and also associated with scoliosis is quadriplegia. Which is the type of cerebral palsy frequently associated with damage to the basal ganglia, so seen in kernicterus, it is dyskinetic. Then most common malignancy, leukemias in children, most common solid malignancy in children, brain tumors, but most common extracranial solid malignancy in children is neuroblastoma. Then brain tumors, I told you, can be supratentorial, infratentorial. Most common in children are infratentorial. Classification brain tumors, low-grade gliomas, which includes pilocytic astrocytomas, pilomaxoid astrocytomas, and subependymal giant cell astrocytomas. Another group, medulloblastomas, embryonal brain tumors, highly dangerous, arising from the center of the cerebellum. Then ependiomas arising from the ventricle lining, mainly from the lining of the fourth ventricle, and craniopharyngioma, which arises from the pituitary area. So I think with this neurology is now thoroughly prepared for you. So with this we end chapter number 4 also. We'll take a lunch break now. After the lunch break, we start with chapter number 5, which is renal disorders. Please keep in mind, we have already done almost around 50 to 60%, maybe 70% of pediatrics. These 4 chapters cover almost around 70-75% of pediatrics. Now the chapters are much smaller, much easier to understand for your FMG exam. So we have covered up the major portion of pediatrics. If you have understood till here, I think you have understood 75% of pediatrics. So let us take a lunch break and we'll rejoin after 1 hour. Thank you.